Okay, good morning to everybody. This morning we will continue our discussion with different types of Buddhist studies and methods. Now, you remember we started this discussion a couple of weeks ago, but then I went into some aspects of scientific knowledge and also the scientific method, and particularly the concept of knowledge. So initially we discussed the textual research method, but then from that we went into the aspects of knowledge and the scientific knowledge, those things. Now from that discussion, again I would like to come to the discussion we stopped. So we had a fairly sufficient discussion on how to do textual research. Now I understand most of you must be interested in textual research, purely on text. But on the other hand, whatever the research we do, it can be doctrinal, philosophical, conceptual, or anything. Texts are the basis. So you can't do it without text. So therefore textual research is very important. But sometimes we do as our research only the textual research, like say for example editing a text or interpreting a text or something like that. But any other studies we do also have basically it is roots in textual research, because now these are some of the things we discuss in editing, literating, translating, constructing, reconstructing text, and these things. I'm not going to go into these details again because we already discussed these things. Then there were problems of translating text and then the interpretation of text. So we are the kind. These are the kind of things we discussed. Today I would like to discuss with you philosophical studies. Now, when we talk about philosophical studies, how do we do a philosophical study in Buddhism? Now, interesting initial aspect of this discussion is, when we talk about philosophical discussion, we have to first understand what do we mean by the philosophy or philosophical discussion, because unlike any other subject, when we talk about philosophy, there is something very interesting. We need to know first what philosophy means, because the very interpretation of that term has many aspects. Not like any other subject. Say for example, if you study geography or mathematics, any similar subject, we will initially know what it is. But of course we will not have a long discussion on that, because basically we know what the subject means. But philosophy is different, because in philosophy sometimes we have so many discussions on what philosophy means, because from different time periods in different societies and in different traditions, the scholars have understood by this term various things. Now, so in order to know as to what philosophical studies is, we need to know what philosophy is. So let me briefly introduce you a couple of interpretations first. Now, philosophy as a theoretical explanation of any subject we study. That is one aspect. Philosophy as love of wisdom. philosophy as conceptual analysis and investigation, philosophy as the worldview of an individual or a system of thought, philosophy as meta considerations of any subject we studied. So these are some, but still not all. Now if we look at the word philosophy, this word comes from basically from Greek language, because it is considered to be the if we talk about the Western philosophical tradition, they say philosophy started in ancient Greece. So therefore the word we are using today, this word philosophy comes from two Greek words, philo, and then the other word is sophia. Philo and sophia. So philo is friend or admirer or lover, that is philo. Sophia means wisdom. So love of wisdom, basically what philosophy means. And then philosopher means the person who loves wisdom, lover of wisdom or admirer of wisdom. So this is basically the idea. But then the question is, what do we mean by wisdom? You know, is it wisdom is knowledge, or wisdom is something else? Are the knowledge and wisdom are connected, or are they two different things? What do they really mean by wisdom? Now, different traditions. Now, of course, in today, when we study Buddhism, I mean in English language, we usually translate Panya as wisdom. But then the important question is whether what we in Buddhist studies refer to as Panya, and also in the ancient Greece, what they meant by wisdom, are they exactly the same or two different things? It's a very important thing, because this is some point we need to be very careful, because when we say Sophia is wisdom, then Prajna is also wisdom in the translation, then we tend to think that okay, these two must be the same. But you know, it is completely, I mean, we can't simply go by the term wisdom there, because we simply chose to translate the term Panya as wisdom. But that doesn't mean that, you know, in English language or in the ancient Greek language, what they meant by Sophia is really the same thing. So in order to know really what it is, we really have to go deep into the, say, Buddhist tradition to know what Panya is, and also the Western tradition to know what Sophia or wisdom means. So this, you know, this issue with the terms is something very interesting. Now, in Christianity, in the Old Testament, the first part of the Bible, there is a section called wisdom literature. It's called wisdom literature. But then again, sometimes, you know, the students of Buddhism could think that, you know, there is some connection between Buddhist Panya and the wisdom literature in the ancient Bible, simply because the two words are similar. So what I am saying is, in order to know what wisdom means in each tradition, we need to go into those traditions, right? So when the ancient Greece, when they said the philosophy is love of wisdom, what they meant by wisdom is actually not ordinary knowledge. It is not ordinary knowledge. What they mean by wisdom could be something deeper, but we do not know exactly what it is. Now, when we come to study philosophers like Socrates, we know that he had discussions on knowledge. In one of his dialogues of Plato, where Socrates is a main character, Theaetetus, the problem of knowledge is discussed. But ultimately the conclusion is a sort of negative conclusion. You know, the dialogue doesn't really determine what knowledge means, but it does talk about what knowledge is not, but it doesn't really determine what knowledge is. So ultimately it leaves open. So it looks like Socrates believed that knowledge is something divine or something we cannot acquire in this life, you know, any kind of ideas. But what we can simply say is, you know, what they really mean by wisdom is something, not any factual knowledge, but it could be anything higher, but we don't know exactly what it is. But so philosophy is defined as love of wisdom. But again, we have to remember that now when we discuss today the topic of philosophy, we start from the Western tradition. However, there we are talking about the subject called philosophy we are studying today. But does that mean that what we consider to be philosophy started only in ancient Greece? What about the India? What about China? You know, the other areas where there were, you know, very highly developed civilizations. Now, you know, we have to know about these limitations. Now, when we use this term today, we have in our mind the Western philosophical tradition. However, that does not mean that what is considered to be philosophy is only started in ancient Greece, or it started only in Western tradition and it was not in the Indian tradition, you know, anything like that. Now, if we take mainstream Indian tradition, in it there were at some stage what is called Shat Darshana, 6 philosophical traditions. Now the word used is Darshana. Now Darshana, or in Pali we can say Dassana, comes from basically from the idea of seeing from our eyes. So the Dassana is basically to see, but then in the Buddhist and also in general Indian tradition, Dassana is not merely seeing from our physical eye, but it goes beyond. So when we say in the Buddhist tradition, when we refer to Dassanena Sampanno, the person with Dassana. So Dassana doesn't mean simply seeing by our physical eye. It is something deeper than that. So we can see that in different traditions. So like in the ancient Greek tradition, in the ancient Indian tradition, there were ideas similar to these things, okay? So, I mean, what it means is when we say philosophical study, we have to understand what the term means in, you know, the different contexts and also different traditions. So, in a way we can say, if we understand philosophy as love of wisdom, so whatever study we do in order to understand something that goes beyond ordinary knowledge, we can say philosophical study. So philosophy. Now we will move into the number 1, philosophy as theoretical explanation of any subject we study. Now what is meant by this is something like this. Sometimes we study subjects like, say for example, mathematics, science, we study logic, or we study generally what we call humanities or arts. You know, we different subjects we study. Now, ordinary study of these subjects is what we are doing in schools and colleges. However, when we study these subjects, there is possibility that we can go deep into these subjects and into their roots. Now, for example, we may be studying, for example, mathematics. And then in a school, from a very early period, children study mathematics, and then you can study mathematics up to, very high levels in the university. Now, when we study mathematics, what we study is we are studying how to do mathematics, how to do mathematical calculations. Now, this is what we do when we study mathematics. And then we have tables to remember, and symbols to remember and understand, and then we are working with numbers and symbols. However, if you ask question like, what are the numbers? What kind of existence these numbers have? Now, that question is not really mathematics. That question goes beyond mathematics. But of course, it is related to mathematics, right? If we ask a question like, okay, what are numbers? Where do they exist? Now, that question doesn't belong to mathematics, but similar such questions we can say belongs to philosophy of mathematics. Now, so we study at one level mathematics, and another level we study philosophy of mathematics. Now, when we study philosophy of mathematics, we are just not doing 2 + 2 = 4 and that type of things. But we are raising some questions, fundamental questions about that subject. What are the numbers? What are we dealing with? Do the numbers exist in, among the ordinary reality in the world? What kind of existence do the numbers have? That sort of questions belong to philosophy of mathematics. Now, similarly, in the many subjects we study, we have this aspect. You can study science, and at the same time you can study philosophy of science. Now, when we study philosophy of science, we are not really studying particularly chemistry or physics or biology or any particular subject in science, but we are studying, we are raising some questions that are fundamental to any what we call science. We can raise questions like, what is the nature of scientific, what we call truths? What is the methodology of scientific discoveries? Some aspects we discussed earlier. And what is the nature of scientific knowledge? We discussed inductive and deductive reasoning. Particularly, I would like to talk to you in little more on the deductive reasoning later. But when we ask the types of these questions, those questions do not belong to science proper, but they belong to the general foundation of all the sciences. So that is philosophy of science. So we can study chemistry, we can study physics, but of course, over and above, we can study the philosophy of science. Now, when we study philosophy of science, we are asking certain questions that are fundamental to all the sciences, right? So the nature of scientific knowledge and so on. And another example would be something like when we study law. When we study law, we study legal systems, laws of different countries, laws of different traditions, history of law and things like that. But we can also study philosophy of law. Now, when we study philosophy of law, we are not really talking about any particular law as such, but we will be asking questions like, what is the basis of law? What is the justification of law? Why do you have to obey the laws? Who is the person who has authority to give laws? What makes something a law? All these kinds of questions. Now, those things do not belong into the subject of law proper, but of course, those are what we call philosophy of law. Now, in that manner, any philosophy as a theoretical explanation of any subject we study, philosophy we are going into deeper basis of, the things. Now that is what is called philosophy as a theoretical explanation of any subject we study. So going into the roots and the basis, fundamentals and the foundations of that subject and asking certain questions. So we can say, when we say philosophical studies of something, we can say we are going into the roots, or simply as the second philosophy as love of wisdom I mentioned merely as a definition. And then we will move into the number 3, philosophy as conceptual analysis and investigation. Now another way to look at philosophy will be philosophy as conceptual analysis. We analyze the concept and we also investigate the concepts. Concepts means, the word has some kind of psychological meaning. Concepts are basically in our mind. But in this kind of thing, say in the Buddhist studies, what we mean by concepts is, the basic ideas. Now these basic ideas or basic teachings, these things are given in concepts or words. Now when concepts in our mind, when they come out as words. So we can talk about the concept of truth. We can talk about the concept of Four Noble Truths. We can talk about the concept of karma. So like that, the very fundamental ideas or teachings in Buddhism we can treat as concepts. Now when we treat these things as concepts, say for example concept of truth, now we are going into deep into the concept of truth in Buddhism, okay, and try to ask some very basic questions about, what is the criterion or what is the criteria of truth? Why do we call something to be true? What do we mean by that? That sort of conceptual study. Now, conceptual study is not necessarily a descriptive study. Description can also be included there. Now, for example, if you study concept of karma, like different types of karma, how karma and vipaka are related, those things belong to the descriptive aspect of karma. But when we philosophically study karma, we are asking not really those descriptive questions, but we are asking some different questions. Say for example, karma can be divided into good and bad karmas. What makes a good karma good? What makes a bad karma bad? Which means we are talking about the basis or criterion of behind these concepts. So we can raise questions of that sort. Now that is what is called conceptual analysis and investigation. Now investigation means we are really looking at the concept to see whether it is a consistent concept, whether it has any contradictions within that, things like that. So the investigation is something, the different from description. I think I made this idea clear in my discussion with you of Nagarjuna. Now Nagarjuna's Mula Madhyamika Karika, it has chapters called Pariksha. So all the chapters in Mula Madhyamika Karika are called Pariksha. Pariksha in Sanskrit language is investigation. Now the investigation and exposition or description, explanation are different things. Now when we say exposition of something, we are making a detailed description of that particular thing, right? We are making a detailed description of that. But when we make an investigation, we are not doing a detailed study of that particular subject. We are examining that subject, we are investigating that subject. Now, of course, investigate or examine, we need to know something about it. But then, so some kind of prior knowledge is anticipated or assumed. But assuming that, you have that basic knowledge, then we can examine this concept. Okay. So the examination of concept is something asking some different questions about that particular subject. Now, when we are studying descriptively, we are asking a different set of questions, like how many are there, what are each of these things, and things like that. But when we say we are making analysis or investigation, then we are asking different set of questions, right? For example, when we talk about karma, we will be asking questions like what is the basis of the karma, what are the criterion of the karma, and how the karma doctrine goes along with the other Buddhist doctrines. Say, for example, how karma doctrine goes along with the doctrine of anatma, how the karma vipaka goes along with the doctrine of the karma and rebirth. Now, in these questions, we are not only explaining something, we are trying to examine whether these concepts are ultimately connected together, whether they have any contradictions among them, whether they are logically inconsistent within, things like that. Now, sometimes, in a philosophical study, particularly when we are studying Buddhism traditionally, we don't ask this kind of questions. We assume that everything is, the very consistent, nothing is absolutely inconsistent or everything tallies together. But, these are the assumptions. But if we really ask these questions, we can do a different type of a study. Now, that type of a study is called actually a philosophical study, because we are analyzing and we are investigating, right? Now, say for example, if it is karma again, you can have a very detailed description of karma, okay? Now, that is of course important, that is good, but philosophical study is basically different. You are not going to do a very detailed description of that particular subject or concept, but you are asking a different set of questions. Suppose you are studying Four Noble Truths. You can talk about the detailed description of Four Noble Truths, but at the same time, you can also raise questions about what do we mean by truth. What is the meaning of satya or truth in Buddhism? What are the criteria of, for something to be called true? Now, that sort of things. Now, that sort of questions will take us to a different direction. So, it is one thing to give explanatory account of Four Noble Truths. It is another thing to really ask questions about each concept and their meaning, their definition, their basis and the foundation, how they are connected to the other teachings, how they are connected to the Four Noble Truths scheme, and so on and so forth. So we need to know the type of questions we are asking in a philosophical study. So philosophy as a conceptual analysis and investigation. Now, that is one area where you can really think of, if you are not decided still doing, what kind of study you are doing. This is, the good area in the sense we are based on the knowledge about the subject we already have, but we are still asking different set of questions, okay? If you have any questions, you can ask about it later. So then we will move on to philosophy as the worldview of any individual or system of thought. Now philosophy as the worldview. Now what is the worldview? Philosophy as the worldview of any individual. Now sometimes loosely we refer to sometimes, okay, according to my philosophy. We use that type of language sometimes. So to indicate in that I have a philosophy. In fact, what is meant by that is not that I am a systematic philosopher who is giving the philosophy out, but what it means is when I talk about my philosophy, basically what it means is how I look at things, what is my perspective, what is my point of view. Now that is what is meant by worldview. But when we talk about individual, of course, worldview can be pretty simple because it is how you look at the world. However, when we look at the system, say for example, worldview of Buddhism, what do we understand by that? Now we can talk about the world view of Buddhism. Now, if we use that term, what do we really mean by that world view of Buddhism? Now, what we basically mean by that is how Buddhism understands and looks at, say, reality. Now, reality is, another somewhat, the fancy philosophical term we are using. But what is meant by philosophy is, the reality is basically, reality is what is there, what is in the world, including human beings and other beings, and, all these things is what we call reality. Now, what is the Buddhist attitude to reality? How does Buddhism see it? Now, that type of questions is something about the worldview. For example, when Buddhism talk about three characteristics of reality, anicca, dukkha, and anatta, we can say we are in a way talking about the Buddhist worldview. And similarly, when we say we are discussing the Four Noble Truths, now the Four Noble Truths say something about the world, something about human life, something about the reality. Now, based on Four Noble Truths, we can talk about the Buddhist worldview. Okay, so the worldview is in a way overall concept, overall way of the understanding reality. How do we say react to these things? What kind of attitude do we have about the reality? How should we treat? Now, then if we have some idea of overall worldview of Buddhism, within that we can find how Buddhists should treat nature, how Buddhism considers animal life, plant life, nature. All these things are included within that. Now, so say for example, if we are looking how Buddhism treats animal life, now that can be a part of the Buddhist worldview. Okay? But of course, that is not the totality of the Buddhist worldview, but basically what we mean by that is, the part of reality is animal life. Or how Buddhism views the plant life. Now that can be, the part of the worldview. Or how Buddhism treats the nature. Now when we say nature, we basically talks about what is called inanimate nature, like, not like living beings or human beings or animals. But we can also include the living beings, animals, and everybody within nature. So depending on how we define that term, how we understand that term. Now the worldview is, another very important thing, the way we can study. What is the Buddhist worldview? What is the Buddhist, in a little bit narrow manner we can say, what is the Buddhist viewpoint about something? So philosophy as the worldview of any individual or system of thought. Now, also we can talk about philosophy as meta-considerations of any subject we study. Now, that actually connects with number one, the philosophy as theoretical explanation of any subject we study. Now, philosophy as meta-considerations. Meta means something above. over. Now this term comes from basically, we know this term metaphysics. In Aristotle's philosophy, there is a section called physics where he deals with physical aspects. And then what he could not include in physics, he included in what is called metaphysics. So, but if you take this term meta separately, it means over, above, beyond. So that is what is meant. So what is beyond physics, what is not included in physics, in Aristotle philosophy was called metaphysics. Now based on that concept, today we are talking about philosophy as meta considerations of subjective studies. That means again, as I explained to you, under philosophy as theoretical explanation of any subjective study, philosophy as meta considerations mean also philosophy as something we are raising questions not about the descriptions of that particular subject we are studying, but we raise questions about that subject. Now, if you take the concept of in Buddhism, Abhidhamma, now we have the concept of Dhamma, then we have the concept of Abhidhamma. Actually, if you look at what is Abhidhamma, Abhidhamma is based on the Dhamma. Abhidhamma is analysis of Dhamma. But then why it is called Abhidhamma? Now, the one basic idea is that when you call Abhidhamma, it is an analysis of Dhamma. It is the Dhamma about the Dhamma. So, Abhidhamma is based on the Dhamma. So, it is something like this meta, the analysis of something. Actually, in Buddhist tradition, we have these two terms, Abhidhamma and Abhivinaya, right? Abhidhamma and Abhivinaya. Now, Abhidhamma is clear, we know what Abhidhamma means. But if you think about Abhivinaya, what is really meant by Abhivinaya is not very clear to many people. But I think if we look at Vinaya Pitaka, Parajika Pali, Pachitya Pali, Chullavagga, Mahavagga, and then Parivara Pali. Now, if we look at these 5 Vinaya texts, we can fairly easily identify what Abhivinaya means. Now, Parajika Pali and Pachitya Pali basically deals with basic rules, right? Basic Vinaya rules, which is called Adi Brahmacharyaka Sikha. You are familiar with the term, right? Adi Brahmacharyaka Sikha. And then Chullavagga Pali, Mahavagga Pali deal with what is called Abhi Samacharika Sikha. Now that is Abhi Samacharika means basic behavior. So the Adi Brahmacharyaka is the basic rules. Abhi Samacharika is the basic behavior. So the rules and behavior. Now what is Parivara Pali? Whether it is Abhi Samacharika or Adi Brahmacharyaka. What is Parivara Pali? Now if you look at Parivara Pali carefully, you can see that Parivara, what Parivara does is really analyze the material given in other 4 texts. So Parivara has analysis connected to all the other 4 books. So in other words, we can say Parivara doesn't have anything new. Parivara is really the analysis of the other Vinaya text. They put into tables, put into categories, and asking general questions about the Vinaya rules, how many rules are like this, how many rules are like this, and so on. So that is what is called Abhivinaya. So in the Parivara doesn't have really any Vinaya, any new thing, other than Parajika Pali, Pachitya Pali, and Chullavagga Pali, and Mahavagga Pali. But Parivara Pali deals with the content of those 4 texts. So therefore it is some kind of analysis of Vinaya, not Vinaya proper really. Okay? Now that is a good example of this meta-analysis. You take some subject and you are making analysis. Now that analysis is not properly belonging to that particular subject. But it is a different thing. Now same thing you can see in Abhidhamma. If you take Dhamma Sangani, what Dhamma Sangani does is, the Sangani, it is a calculation, enumeration of the Dhamma. Now when you look at Dhamma Sangani, the content is, you can find in the Sanyutta Nikaya, Majjhima Nikaya, Anguttara Nikaya, Kuddaka Nikaya, in various texts. You can see this content, the scattered in all the Nikayas. Now, what is in the Dhamma Sangani is in a way not something new. All the Dhamma matters have been discussed in the Nikayas. So, those things taken back and analyzed in different ways, that is what the basically Abhidharma does. Right? And if you take, for example, Puggala Panyatti, there are various types of Pudgalas. Now, all those Puggala types are given in the discourses. Right? There is nothing new actually. But what the Puggala Panyatti does is to collect all those things into one place, what the Buddha said about Pudgalas. So in that sense you can see it is a meta-analysis. Can you see what I mean by that? So it is really something about the Dhamma, something about the Vinaya. We take the Vinaya and we make an overall analysis of that. Now that is what is meant by philosophy as meta-consideration of any subject we study. Now you see, when we say we do a philosophical study, we can look at any item of these things as a philosophical study. However, I would like to give you another very important thing, which of course did not come in this the classification very clearly. Now basically when we say we are studying the Buddhism philosophically, another way to describe would be we can look at from philosophical categories. Now looking at philosophical categories, we can do a study of Buddhism, so that can be also philosophical study, to which I will come later. So before leaving this, I would like to see whether you really got the basic idea. Now when we say we are doing a philosophical study, now ultimately the question comes, what do we mean by philosophy then? What is philosophy? Now if philosophy is according to ancient Greek people, love of wisdom, but is it the search for wisdom? What do we really mean by philosophy? Now in fact in this type of studies, we have to remember that we are giving some kind of narrow down definition to philosophy, to understand what philosophical study means. Very vaguely and generally we can say, okay, we are going for in search of wisdom or something. But that is not very clear thing. But basically when we say we are studying philosophy, now philosophy is basically according to modern idea, philosophy is basically to do something analytical, to do some analysis, to do some investigation, to do some questioning. So these are basically what the philosophers do, not accepting something as it is, but examining, inquiring further. So in that sense we can use these terms. We can say investigation is a kind of philosophy, and inquiry is a kind of philosophy, examination is a kind of philosophy, and questioning is a kind of philosophy. Now these things. Now what philosophy means, here you can see investigation, inquiry, examination, questioning, things like that. Now you can see these are really something common to all these things is something we do. So the philosophy as something we do. So not like any other subject, where you have content. Philosophy is, something you do by following a certain method. So philosophy is something you do. So the heart of the whole thing is there is a particular method or how to do it. So philosophy is some kind of action, something to do. So in that sense, when you look at, we can say, Buddhist studies, whatever study we do with these things, in this manner, we can say, philosophical study. So in order to understand what basically philosophical study, I think this is, it would be good for us to be clear about, basically what philosophy means, and also various different ways we can see, what philosophically we do. Okay, before proceeding any further, do you have any questions or anything to clarify? Yes, sir.
Scientific methods for scientific methods. And nowadays, scientific method is very important. How should we know that Buddha's discourse is a scientific method or not scientific method? For example,
Okay, Reverend. I actually the philosophical method and the scientific methods are, we can say, two different things. Now, in my previous discussion, we talked about what is called induction. That is what is called the scientific method. Now, in that, the inductive method, there is a way of acquiring knowledge. Okay. Now, basically, the acquisition of knowledge goes from basic hypotheses, and then the testing the hypotheses, and then you do some kind of research to establish it, that sort of thing. However, when it comes to philosophy, in a philosophical study, the difference is, in a philosophical study, what we do is, we are asking questions about the scientific method. How reliable is this method? How reliable is the material we derive from scientific method? So you can see the philosophy and science, how they differ. So in the science, we are really following a certain method to acquire knowledge. So the acquisition of knowledge is very important in science. Now when it comes to philosophy, philosophers ask questions about what scientists do. Whether what scientists do is justifiable. Whether scientific knowledge is certain. Now you remember in my discussion of induction, I mentioned to you the inductive knowledge we basically get from observation of what is going on in the world. Now by observing about certain things in the world, we get certain knowledge. Now for example, very basic idea that all human beings are mortal. All human beings die. Now, we say something about all humanity. Or we can say all beings. Not only human beings die. But according to scientific method, how do we know this? We know it because so far we have observed that people have died. Nobody has living forever. So based on that, we conclude that all human beings die. However, the difference is, what we have observed is only a limited material. Only a limited material. Up to this point, we have observed that all people who are born they die. But when we say all human beings die, we are saying something about the past, about the present, and also about the future. When we say all human beings die, we not only we say something about the past and the present, we are also saying something about the future. Now the philosophers ask, how do we know that whether future it will be the same? Now that's a question philosopher would ask. Now you see, so the science gets knowledge through some particular method. Now that is called inductive method, inductive reasoning, that comes from the empirical research. But then philosophers come and raise certain questions about them. How reliable is that knowledge? Now that question doesn't belong to science, that question belongs to philosophy of science. So you see the difference. Now scientists gather knowledge. Philosophers ask questions about that knowledge. Philosophers ask questions about the validity of that knowledge. Philosophers ask questions about the durability of that knowledge. You see, so the two different concerns. Then somebody can say, okay, look, new knowledge is given by science, but philosophers, what are they doing? What they do is, useless thing or something. Because what philosophers give is not a new knowledge. It's true, but on the other hand, when you have investigation, inquiry, examination, questioning about anything, any particular thing, then things become more clear. So that is the philosopher's task. Philosopher provides, help us to get clarity about what we know. So it is knowing something is one thing, being clear about those things is another. So this is basically the difference between philosopher and a scientist. In other words, we can say philosophers raise a lot of questions. But sometimes they don't have answers to all these questions, but they do raise a lot of questions. Now, raising questions itself is a very important revealing thing. When you ask the right question, then you are directed to look for the right answer. But on the other hand, scientists go out and do research, experiment, empirical investigations and gather information. We are making use of those things. So these are the two different things. So the scientists gather knowledge, acquire knowledge, and philosophers try to make clarifications about any particular concerns or questions about that knowledge. So this is basically what is happening. Okay. Now in a philosophical study, we are only basically using a method to study some particular thing. So in our next part of our discussion, we will look at how do we apply philosophical method to study Buddhism. Maybe we'll take a short break and then we will come back.